Welcome to the Fandom Outpost, your podcast for all things pop culture.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Fandom Outpost. All throughout the month of October, we are focusing on scary genre, either movies or things like that in pop culture. And this is one that we all like rather well. So all throughout the month of October, we are focusing on pop culture things that are either scary or terrifying, gross, you name it. And this one is, I guess it would be the genre of vampires. We did I am 1/3 your host. My name is Mark.
I'm Jim.
And I'm Bob. Jim's got some tooth problem.
Oh my God, he does. What the fuck? I was waiting for Bob's trademark. Hi, everybody. He didn't do it. Just got those fucking teeth in.
I got freaked out.
What?
This is a promise kept from our Demeter episode review of The Last Voyage of the Demeter, which we promised a vampire episode to cover the genre, right? In October. Yeah. And now we're in October, and all the ghouly fun has started, and here we are.
Ghouly fun. Speaking of ghouls, make sure you guys check out our Romero Zombie episode. So the vampire genre itself. Don't put those teeth back in, dude, because I'm gonna laugh every time
They're
I
off.
say
They're
it.
off.
Okay. I was like, that really fucked Bob up too. He was like, "What is that?" Oh, he got the T-shirt. Oh, what do I got on?
We're representing.
It's all right. You guys are good.
Is that EC Comics on your hat there that you're wearing?
It is EC Comics on my hat.
Nice. So the genre of vampires, and I'm doing the whole quotation thing.
It's all about the romanticism, right?
It's been around for 100 plus years. 100 plus years, baby.
Mark's favorite part of the genre.
Yes. And I love the romance. I love the seduction. I love that they glisten in the sun. Get the fuck out of here.
I was going to say, wait a minute.
Oh, my God. No. Vampires to me is this guy right here, you know? Although the Langella Dracula over my head is a personal favorite. Like, that was... I feel that young, seductive Langella, boy, he had it going on in that movie. If you've never seen that 1970s Dracula, not the Coppola one that I'm talking about. So that Gary Oldman one that's a divisive one at best. Anyway, vampires been around since about the 1800s. The folklore for vampires even longer than that. But I love, he's back there somewhere, the first foray into film, 1922's F.W. Murnau's Nosferatu, silent movie. Basically, it's a ripoff of Dracula, folks. We touched on that with the Demeter episode that we did. But that kind of kickstarts it until we get an official Dracula in, I'm not sure the year. Do you know the year, Jim?
1931, I think.
Is that it? Yeah, something like that. Yeah. And that
is my universal thread.
That kind of makes a superstar out of Bela Lugosi. And that movie just, this is going to be a weird sentence to say, folks. That movie terrorized audiences. It did. You go back and look at it today and you're going to be like, wow, I don't understand that. But this is the 30s. I mean, the advent of the motion picture was really still in its, I'd say it's its infancy. And that movie comes along and just blows it out the water, followed by our lovely Universal monsters. So what do you guys got to say about Dracula? Fans here? No? You guys like Dracula?
Oh. Yeah, he's certainly a captivating presence anytime he's on screen. So, yeah, it really is. It's an odd film because it has no score. Until later, they put a score to it. Not too recently. But it's a little stagey. It's a little stiff because it comes from a stage play. It's an adaptation of the stage play. So once you kind of know that, you kind of understand that a little better. But no, it's iconic. He sets the template for vampires for decades. Yeah.
Unfortunately, Dracula never achieves the status that the 31 Lugosi movie does, even though Bela Lugosi does several other movies for Universal after that. I mean, with Dracula, you got Dracula's Daughter, Son of Dracula, House of Dracula.
Right. House of Frankenstein, House of Dracula, and Son of Dracula is the first time we get the Count Alucard. So
Right.
that trope that we flip
And
that around.
and then not to what do they call it? Ring a to beat a dead horse in mouse. I forget what the
you're getting blood
you
from a
know,
stone, right? You
getting blood from a stone, man. All of that culminates in Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein.
which might be my first introduction to a lot of those characters. But actually, Dracula's
Right?
kind of scary in that.
He's still Dracula. Like
Right,
he's still the Dracula.
But that movie commits the sin though, and my biggest only flaw with Abbott and Costello meets Dracula is that you can see his reflection in a mirror in one scene.
Well,
Yeah,
maybe that had not been part of the lore yet. You know, I don't know.
No, it was lore from the first movie where Van Helsing opened the box
right.
with the But
That's
it's
true.
It's a minor nitpick. So,
Van Helsing in the 31 Dracula was not a good foil for him. Although that guy at the time, like he's a great actor for what he did, like his background and stuff like that. But it just, when you look at it, they're not the modern take on a Dracula and Van Helsing, so to speak. If you know what I'm saying.
Glory years of Universal, right? We get through that. And
that's it.
You're mentioning Abbott Costello, kind of that tail end of it, right?
bit of the death of the Universal monsters.
Yeah,
but
which is too bad because like it's a good movie. Go back and watch it. It's got, is it Lon Chaney who's in that as the Wolfman?
Yeah, it's and Glenn Strange as Frankenstein. Absolutely.
Yeah, like there's quality people in it, and I guess because they're all contracted with the studio, you know.
And the thing that makes it scary when you're a kid and you watch it is because they don't treat the monsters comedically. Abbott and Costello are funny, but the monsters are straight.
Right. But monsters aren't, right. Is that the one, correct me if I'm wrong, is that the one where Frankenstein, they burn him up on the dock and he falls through?
Yeah.
Yeah, dude, that, I always was like, like that got me. That scene got me and stuff. So, but I love that movie. I hate to use it in these sentences like it's not part of that lore, you know, it's Abbott Costello, it's funny, but no, it's a really good movie. And for a Universal picture with the monsters in it, it's a really good monster movie.
Yeah.
So
it's good.
There's actually a 10-year gap that nothing really happens.
Right. What happens after that, right?
The Hammer movies is what happens after that 10-year gap. So
in
after
England.
the Costello one, you get weird movies in there. I don't even have any of the titles because I was looking my research. I was like, yeah, none of them matter.
Yeah,
but then when Hammer comes along, in
58, Hammer comes along and they remake it, and it's the first time we'll get to see Dracula in color.
Right.
And Hammer uses all that color to its max. We get to see very red blood. And they're very luscious looking films. And we get the best
color
on
everything. Oh yeah. Sorry, Anthony Hopkins.
Yeah, we get the best Van Helsing and Peter Cushing, who would reprise the role in another film afterwards.
One of the things about that era is that Peter Cushing, and you didn't even mention Christopher Lee taking over the role of Dracula.
Right.
A lot of people might know Christopher Lee from these modern movies, you know, the Tim Burton films or Lord of the Rings or stuff like that. But he's a tall actor. And if you go watch those vampire movies, the Hammer movies with him, he's tall, he's seductive, and he's
very
terrifying.
Imposing. Yeah.
Yeah, like he's an imposing guy. And Jim has said numerous times about villains in all of our podcasts. Hero's only as good as its villain. So you get these two Shakespearean stock actors in Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee to play these iconic roles. And Peter Cushing is phenomenal as his foil. He can give as good as he gets physically, and he's intelligent. And there's a lot added to the lore that comes with Hammer. Stuff that nobody would touch on today. like the scene with him putting holy water and using the hot poker
Oh, yeah.
to fix himself. I mean,
Yeah, Brides of
that's
Dracula,
just, yeah, that's crazy, but they're fantastic. Those Hammer films, and I think that was probably my first introduction to, besides Abbott and Costello.
Always really inventive in the way they dispose of the vampires. And shout out to Christopher Lee, because they don't really give him a lot to do. You know, to a point where he stops saying dialogue. He was like, "Yeah, I'm not going to say it. I'm not going to repeat your dialogue." And they would guilt trip him into like, "Oh, Chris, will you please sign on? Because we sold the film saying that you were going to be Dracula, and if you're not Dracula, then we don't get to do the film." And then it puts all these people out of work, which is like a really crappy way to make somebody, you know, Shanghai them into being in a film. So,
yeah, you know, I mean, Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing are so popular together. They do other movies together. Like that's just
absolutely.
not. There's a movie out there that, and maybe this is the first time Bob's going to hear it, but I have to recommend it. It is a fantastic film. It's called Horror Express.
Mm-hmm.
And I know Jim knows about this.
Oh yeah,
but it's a strange one. And both Cushing and Lee are the actual heroes of they're on the same side, which is a rarity for stuff like that.
Yeah,
yeah, they're on the same side, and it has a young Telly Savalas in it.
Yeah,
but it's a good movie. It's weird in the fact that it's one of those 70s weird ones, but it's a great film. And speaking of the 70s, when you come out of the Hammers, you're kind of in this 70s limbo where you're gonna get like Jim watched what's the exploitation movie you watched the other day?
I watched Scream, Blackula Scream. Which is, hey, you know what? And it's called considered blaxploitation, but William Marshall, who plays Blackula, is it Mumwald, I think is his name, who was turned into a vampire by Dracula.
Yep.
He's a fantastic actor, and he really has a gravitas to him, and he drags it all the way through there. And for what they are,
he's got that Lee imposing this to him, like he really does,
and a wonderful, rich voice. And a lot of people might remember him more as the king of cartoons on Pee-wee's Playhouse. So he went on to to do that.
But he makes one called Blackula, and then he makes a sequel called Scream, Blackula Scream. Two very extremely popular movies in the blaxploitation or even exploitation of the 70s. Yeah. And I remember watching those as a kid and just being enthralled. I'm like, these are great. Oh, yeah. This is great. Like, I love them. Absolutely. But you get a lot of weird 70s experimentation vampire genre. That's kind of it for the first half of the century. There's your quick update, folks, of the vampire genre for the first half of the century.
Right. That's why I enjoy that Kolchak Night Stalker, getting into vampires in a few of his episodes. That's kind of where I first was like seeing it in TV, besides the older, Sir Graves Ghastly Saturday afternoon shows or whatever.
Right, and that's how we were experiencing these. Mostly were creature features and horror hosts and things like that. So, but when Night Stalker hits the scene, it's primetime television and it's new, right?
Yeah. It's a like I always say, I enjoy the modern day vampire where it's like set in a modern day environment that you may encounter.
It's not a mistake that coming out of the 70s weirdness, that's the pilot movie. And Bob champions the Night Stalker Kolchak series like really well. Like,
cool character. Yeah, it was creepy, and it really creeped me out as a kid, and it always kind of got me into that modern day vampire genre.
Didn't they showed close-ups, right? Like in the Night Stalker, like they were close up on his face, and he had that downward angle. Oh yeah,
and eyes were red, and he needed to get blood, and went to the hospital to steal blood reserves out of the fridge, and Carl Kolchak, awesome. Is the only one that believes that he's a vampire. Everyone else thinks Kolchak is nuts, and Kolchak encounters him in the house with the girl tied up that he's using as a feeding source. They have the square off, and of course Kolchak breaks open the window, which is usually kind of the way it ends. From my youth, the vampire always got exposed to the light at the end. And then no one believes them. No one believes
no one believes him,
even though all this
there's
happened,
no
they
proof.
still don't believe him.
His pictures never turn out. He has no proof. The monster disappears. As the stories
that's
go.
awesome. When the Night Stalker comes out, it really changes everything from that lush countryside of Hammer with those bright colors to the grittiness of just wherever. It's Los Angeles, it's Chicago.
On the streets, right?
Yeah, it's on the streets. It really changes the genre itself. And I credit the Night Stalker for that. So whatever anybody didn't like during that time, the Night Stalker, really, somebody had to look at it and be influenced by that. The dudes that do the X-Files, all that kind of stuff where they're like, it just kind of changes everything, you know?
And then there's the Night Gallery, which is just, we touched on that a lot in our intro to Halloween episode a few weeks ago. But no, it's interesting that these are all TV things, and it kind of segues into your favorite, I know, you wanted to touch on.
Yeah. The 70s end for me with this guy right here, okay? My favorite vampire movie of all time, although it's a TV movie. There you go again, Bob. See? So it's a TV movie.
And it's called, for the people listening?
1978, I believe, Salem's Lot. It was a two-parter. Vampires in there are no joke. They didn't speak. I mean, they kind of spoke. They hissed at you, but yeah, that's... And it's as far away from the source material as you could get, because in the source material is more Dracula-esque. This thing was not. To this day, directed by Tobe Hooper, who's passed away now, it's long remembered as being one of the best in the genre, which I think it is. This guy right here, Barlow, his name's Kurt Barlow. He's an homage to Nosferatu from 1922. So, and it works. He's not on screen a lot. He's got like 6 minutes of screen time, but every scene he's in is powerful. And that kind of closes out the 70s of this gritty stuff that we're talking about and brings us into the 80s, folks. And there's
a little gap, right? You guys would say?
You're talking The Lost Boys, Fright Night, and then one that Bob just watched the other day, which I know he wants to talk about.
Get into that.
But those are the type of movies that got their humor, you know, with the Frog Brothers from Lost Boys, things like that. So it lightens the mood after a big scare. Oh my God, that's a vampire. It's scary. He does this. And then what? You get some comedic scenes and stuff.
Yeah, Lost Boys kind of grows out of the MTV era of vampires, right?
Makes it more accessible, right? Saying, for younger people
and they're more teens being vampires, right? The Lost Boys is a reference to the Peter Pan characters that lived on the island with him, were the Lost Boys.
Right.
And I don't know where you guys feel about it, but Kiefer Sutherland does get a lot of love for that character. I swear.
He should. It's a good character. He got the best role in that film. So, sorry, Jason Patrick.
So. Right. No, but you would say he kind of reinvented that character. Kind of reinvents a little bit the kind of the cool dude character of
genre.
A vampire.
Yeah.
Right.
It's like, you want to be part of the Lost Boys because we're cool, right? Be part of our
right. Yeah. So it's cool to be a vampire now,
right?
You know, and they're not monsters. Well, they are, but they're. Hey, I can talk to you and I can blend in. You know.
Right.
And it's cool that we can hang out and ride motorcycles.
Right. Hang off bridges and things like that. Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah. Unfortunately, controversial statement coming up. I was not a fan of the Lost Boys. It's enjoyable, but I'm not a huge fan. I preferred Fright Night in the 80s there.
Fright Night was great.
I really loved that one. And I'm glad that somebody's discovering that all this stuff doesn't have to be Dracula anymore. Like Dracula's gone the wayside now.
Right.
Now it's just vampires.
Oh, but he makes an appearance though in the 80s. Right. Unfortunately, it's a few weeks after Lost Boys. He makes the appearance in the Monster Squad.
Ah, man, I don't think we have time to talk about the Monster Squad.
All right, so it's a great Dracula. He's played very wonderfully by Duncan Renegar.
Yep.
And there's a wonderful documentary on it's actually on Tubi right now. It's called Wolfman Has Nards.
Yeah, it's a good documentary.
And it talks about how that movie just got lost, but it has a huge cult following. And it kind of ruined a guy's career for a while. So the directors.
Right. Oh, and for Bob, our boy Tom Noonan shows up in that movie. He's Frankenstein in that movie. Right. It's got a great opening. It's got the whole.
Oh, the opening's fantastic.
Yeah, the opening's great. With a Van Helsing and everything in there and stuff.
It's a love letter to older films. So
yeah, Yeah.
We'll just leave
Plus,
it
it
at
pulls
that.
on your heartstrings, dude. If you don't watch that whole thing about the girl and Frankenstein at the end, and she's crying, she doesn't want him to go away. Like, if you don't feel for that, you are dead inside, because that was pretty good, you know. So
So we
I
get
still love
into
that movie.
did
Fright Night,
watch-
right?
Well, Fright
You did
Night,
that?
yeah. I mean,
Yeah, but Fright Night is considered, and there's makeup in it, and it's still got the grittiness. Of course, soundtracks become super popular with
Right.
these movies. Referencing Lost Boys and stuff like that. I know Bob's got one that he just watched
Yeah,
yesterday
tell us about
that I
that
want to
one.
hear him talk
just
about. Yeah,
I want to touch on briefly. I watched Near Dark from 1987, the Catherine Bigelow movie. That it's really hard to find that thing. I was lucky enough to find it at my local library because I
That was
couldn't find
amazing.
it couldn't find it streaming or
Nope.
digital or rental. It's not on Vudu. It's just really hard to find that one. And I was really curious. I probably saw it on cable back in the 80s, late 80s, whatever, or 90s, because I don't remember it very well. And the funniest thing about it is that it has the cast, like three actors from Aliens, which has
Yeah.
the James Cameron connection because he
Yeah,
was
there you
married
go.
to Catherine Bigelow. And we
Right.
got, Lance Henriksen, Jeanette Goldstein, and of course, what did I say? Bill Paxton. Bill
No,
Paxton.
Bill Paxton.
Bill
yeah.
Paxton.
Who basically steals the movie. I mean,
Yes, he does.
He is great in that, and it's like he is just like, Bill, go do what you want, because he's he's got the best lines, he's got the best the scenes. He's just
Right.
great in that movie, and it is. I didn't love it, but I did enjoy that part of it, the actors,
Right.
and it was a bit of a. I read about it a little bit, that it was a kind of a mixed Western with a vampire film. And that kind of showed, because they were this kind of traveling band of vampires that went from town to town and feeding on the locals.
Right.
And it did have a weird thing about the blood transfusion could definitely work 100% and turn you back, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah.
Kind of that whole thing was kind of weird. But Mark,
Yeah.
you're right. It was a lot about a romance between a young man that one of the younger vampires bites, and then he's half turned, and there's a struggle with her
That's
and
that
him
whole
being
Romeo
together.
and Juliet thing
And
aspect
then
of it. Yeah.
his family's trying to get him back, and so there's a lot of that in it. But if you really liked Aliens and the actors in that, you'll love this, I think, because the three of them are just like going off in that movie,
Awesome.
and they just work so well together. That was really enjoyable. Fun
Well,
note.
we were talking.
Fun note, because you'll enjoy this, Mark. I read that Michael Biehn was offered the role of Lance Henriksen, but he turned it down.
Wow.
He turned it down because he didn't understand the plot. He didn't think the plot was something for him, I guess.
Oh wow. Well,
And but that would have been cool.
Yeah, I was talking to Bob about this yesterday. Like, obviously, we were on the phone talking about it, and I just think that movie was ahead of its time. Like it was. It's got so many things in it that's new to the genre or is old to the genre and we haven't seen yet. Like, we haven't seen a Romeo and Juliet type of thing yet with that. Like, that. So I just think she had this really cool idea, Catherine Bigelow, the director, I mean, and it just was ahead of its time. If that thing got released now, like, people would be like, "Oh, that's an auteur film," and
Kind of like a
stuff like
Twilight-y
that.
type thing, right?
Yeah, it's just a little bit different with the gore and nastiness,
Yeah,
though,
there's
that
some-
we
there's
all want to
some-
see. Yeah.
There's some gory
So-
stuff, right?
And folks, like I said, this was kind of our introduction to the genre, so we might have another episode of this because we're only up to the 80s or something like that. So, do you both have a favorite vampire film? I mean, I haven't really heard anything about that.
Man, I guess again, we talked about vampires, and they're not necessarily my wheelhouse for monsters I like, because most often they're just people.
Yeah.
So they're not creatures, but anytime a vampire's a creature in a film, I dig those. So,
Okay.
I did like the Hammer stuff, was the stuff that scared me as a kid, though. So,
Nice. What about
And
you, Bob?
I Fright Night, really, I enjoy that one. I love Roddy
Yeah.
McDowell on that. I love his throwback to the schlocky.
forgot about that.
I
forgot
yeah,
about that.
Peter Vincent.
whole Peter
Peter
I wouldn't say
Vincent.
schlocky, but kind of corny, host of a horror
Right.
show, and it's just, I don't know, it touches on a lot of things that we all grew up with and enjoy, and then it throws in this whole vampire living next door kind of thing. With,
and Chris Sarandon's fantastic as Jerry Dandridge.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You would like,
Yeah.
I'll be a vampire.
Is it Jerry Dandridge? I think?
Jerry Dandridge, yeah.
One of the coolest
And by the
vampires,
way,
right?
Horrible sequel, folks. Don't ever watch Fright Night Part 2. It's not good. Even though Roddy McDowell and the kid return, it just, the story is not good. It's really bad. Fun fact, though, they remade Fright Night with, unfortunately, Anton Yelchin, who has passed away, and a popular actress and stuff. And Colin Farrell as Jerry Dandridge.
And McLovin.
There's a cameo in there by Chris Sarandon.
Nice.
The Colin Farrell character stops Chris Sarandon in a car. It's pretty good. It's a comedic 5 minutes, but thank God they did that. So, and the remake's not that bad. It's got David Tennant as your Peter Vincent.
No, it's a good reimagining.
So, yeah, it is. It really is. And plus, who doesn't love David Tennant? Like, he's everybody's sweet, popular Doctor Who guy right now. So,
he's on Ahsoka too. I think the voice of the robot.
Yes.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
There's a nice connection. Yeah, and go back and watch our Ahsoka
mini pod on YouTube.
Yeah.
Getting into the 90s, I know you got your Anne Rice novels, right? That kind of bring back,
really takes off.
brings back the romance, Mark's favorite, into the vampire genre.
Yeah,
you get your Interview with the Vampire with Tom Cruise and Brad Pitt.
Well, Interview with the Vampire is not that bad. The source material is not that bad. There's a lot of mythology about it, and she's equal across the board, which I like. So the sexuality between, say, Brad Pitt and Tom Cruise is cool. It's not just the romanticism of, I'm a vampire and I'm going to seduce this woman and stuff. I don't have a problem with that at all. And young Antonio Banderas as Armand, I really dug that. Like, I like the movie version of that, even though it's not quite what she imagined, but it's one of those better Tom Cruise roles. And somebody pointed out that might be technically his first villain role, but he's an anti-hero. He's not,
right.
Vincent in Collateral is a villain role. So, right. I stand by that, but I liked Interview with the Vampire. I saw it in the theaters and I've enjoyed that for a while.
And then you got your
lays the groundwork for a lot of stuff that follows afterwards.
Right. But every time somebody does that and they do a source material and it's popular, suddenly it's like, we have to go search out more of that. You know what I mean?
Right.
So years before the young adult craze took off, but you got a lot of that derivative of Interview with a Vampire type stuff, which I think is a series now on TV, isn't it?
I believe so.
Yeah.
Oh my
AMC,
God.
I think.
What else you got, Bob? What did you say?
Well, probably the biggest would be Bram Stoker's Dracula, right? From Francis Ford Coppola. That was probably the biggest of the 90s. It was probably hit the widest audience. And
that was a huge production. Huge.
Brought the original novelization type thing from Dracula to the screen.
There's a lot about that I really like because it's the first time that it has all the characters from the novel in it, like the whole group of Van Helsing's
really
boys.
Went all in on it, right?
Yeah. So, Jim, don't you have a problem with Oldman's performance in there?
I like Gary Oldman, but I just don't like Gary Oldman Dracula. That's it.
Oh, okay. All right. I don't have a problem with it, but
we have some pictures. We have some pictures from Jim had a party. And
oh goodness,
we got some pictures.
So he's gonna have to insert that stuff.
Yeah, there's me as Gary Oldman Dracula.
I didn't like you then either, Bob.
What?
So I didn't
Jim's
like you then either.
on fire today. Oh my God, we've been discovering our Halloween pictures, folks. So hopefully they're gonna pop up. Oh, that stuff is terrible. Look at that stuff.
And then Jim,
man.
Yeah, I'm more of a wannabe horror host, kind of creepy to do with the top hat. So
the vampire genre is still going strong, folks. I mean, it goes to this day. Every now and then somebody hits one out the park. I enjoyed Last Voyage of the Demeter. I thought that was a great addition to the vampire genre.
Absolutely.
You don't get a lot of them nowadays. It's kind of like the Western.
Yeah,
it's not a young adult novel. It's dying off.
A good segue to that one I wanted to touch on just for 30 seconds
please.
Or so is a girl walks home. A girl walks home alone. Let me say it again. A girl walks home alone at night.
Yeah, that sounded really interesting when you touched on that. So
it's an art film, 2014. The director is Anna Lily Amirpour, and she's Iranian-born and raised in the U.S. But it's a story of a lonely vampire, young girl who is kind of like a vigilante against some bad men that live in this kind of a ghost town in Iran with all kinds of oil things in the background. It's a really interesting black and white. And I just love the character of this vampire because she wears a chador, I believe you call it, the black dress, of the Iranian women. And it substitutes as a vampire cloak. So it's so cool that she wears this at night. It's really cool. And the shot that I remember from this is she kind of meets this little boy and scares him into, you better be good. It's all subtitled, but he says, you better be a good boy. Scares the crap out of this kid. And then takes his skateboard. So kind of cut back, and she's on the skateboard kind of gliding down the street. It's just like cool. And she's got this flowing black chador thing, and it's just such a cool shot of a vampire on a skateboard. Such a modern take on it. It just sticks in my mind. It's such an interesting film. So.
And, it's too bad. Like, I saw it, and it got a lot of press when it came out, but, like, it disappeared instantly because it's that art house stuff. You know what I mean?
So if you could find that one, I found it on Canopy. You could stream it for free on that.
And I'll try to watch any type of vampire movie, even if I think it's going to be bad, like, i.e., Subspecies. Oh. So I'm just saying, I don't have time to touch on that stuff.
With the movie you were mentioning, Bob, it's always really interesting to see it because vampires they seem to be represented cross-culturally in a lot of different cultures. And it's always really interesting to see it as they are represented in what different mythologies that different countries have with them.
Well, in all these different stories, and I know I'm going to get it wrong because I can't remember it. They remade it, but there's the one about the girl.
Let the right one in?
Let the right one in, yeah. I think that's a Russian made.
Is it also called Let Me In? I've seen that.
Oh, Let Me In. I think when they remade it, there was Let Me In.
Chloe Moretz.
Right. Let the Right One In, I think, is their original
source. It's got two names. You're right.
And it's a Russian film. I think it's it's a Russian one.
You're right. The U.S. is
that's really good too, because that was like, wow, that kind of subverted some expectations when I saw that. But I was like, okay, it did not need to be remade though with Chloe Grace Moretz. It just didn't need to be remade. So the original one stands.
Well, we could talk for hours on this, right?
Yeah,
we got to wrap it up.
We might touch on this again with some other ones.
I'm gonna dip the toe in this time. So
dip the toe.
So join us again as we continue our spooky October, however you want to call it. But
Spooktober?
If we're having fun,
no, that don't sound right.
With our scariness through October, please come back for more. Subscribe.
I never even thought about getting fake teeth. Jim's over there with fake fucking vampire teeth.
Thank you for watching.
We're all fucking up Bob's epilogue here. We're going to have to pause and redo this.
So join us again. Follow us on Facebook or Instagram. We try to get some cool stuff up. And subscribe. We really appreciate all the support. And it kind of keeps us going to see more support. We love it.
Right.
And we love to hear your opinions and join the discussion. We love the comments. We love replying to the comments, and it's a lot of fun. So
absolutely.
You guys have
this
fun.
One, sorry to interrupt. This one really begs itself to please tell us your favorite vampire flick. I really want to know, anybody who listens to us, I want to hear, because I bet you if 10 people answered, it's 10 different answers.
Absolutely.
I want to hear that. Yeah.
Hopefully we threw out a few titles that no one knew about. Maybe they could search them and check them out and find something new. That's how I found out about a few that we talked about just from our discussions.
Right.
So with that, I guess we'll wrap up.
All right. See you guys.
All right, everybody.
See ya.